You have a great job with Showtime Broadcasting, and you do a great job. Does this kind of help towards the twilight of your career? Does that make you want to retire sooner than maybe you would have otherwise?
Well, I'll tell you what, when you have press conferences like the one me and Broner had, where things kind of get out of hand, and then, you start to think like, oh man, you know what, I'm a TV broadcaster. There's certain things that I should have to keep on the hush about, and then, I think about my whole life. I've never been put in a situation where I haven't been able to speak my mind, I've been able to not have that filter or that mouthpiece, and I've never paid for it, because I've been a fighter my whole life, So now that I'm in a situation where it's almost like a corporate scenario here, where hey man, your behavior reflects on the network and your job, and you have to really use your best judgment when even promoting your own fights. It starts to make me think: is it worth putting myself at risk to continue fighting when I can't say the kind of things I've always said at press conferences? I can't say the kind of things I've always said in interviews. Is it worth it? You start to wonder about, is it worth continuing to fight and broadcast at the same time? But right now I enjoy competing too, so it's hard to just give one up. I am the WBA welterweight champion, so that belt comes with a big paycheck. So I can't just leave it on the table.
My final question is actually from Brendan McComish, who's also a boxing fan. He wanted to know, of your entire career, what was your favorite fight?
Love More Than Do fight. It was a world title fight a year after I lost to Aiello Cotto. So the fact that what guys get back-to-back world title fights and they're not without Heyman. If I knew that if I didn't win that fight, and it was against actually an Al Heyman fighter, by the way. Love More Than Do was without Heyman. It's like, what situation would I have been in had I lost another world title fight a year after losing the first one? I probably wouldn't have got another world title fight till I was 30, because you say, hey, Paulie, you got 2 world title shots, you lost them both, you got to start all the way back, So I'd say that saved my career in that moment. Then the Juan Diaz rematch, I cried robbery the first time around, and it was a fight where I felt like I had my back to the wall and I had to win it, and I didn't win it. I got robbed in it. So when I was given the rematch, it was like, okay, back to the wall again. It's career-saving time again. If you don't win this, your career's done, And once again, I had a big win, and I saved my career and got myself into some other big fights. And then finally, the Vyacheslav-Lomachenko fight, because it was, in Ukraine, playing again, you're back to the wall again, and I couldn't get a network TV date with any of the major networks. Showtime and HBO would not put me on TV, That comes from not being Al Heyman again, Once I won that fight, I knew that once again I had saved my career at a point in time where, my back was to the wall, and, if I didn't win, my career was probably over. Like I say, those were probably the 3 most career-defining fights. It's funny, my favorite fight was the Kevin Watts knockout. I fought on ESPN 2 years ago, and it was just a guy who was talking so much trash, and I was a young hot shot, and he was like an older guy who was so cocky. And I went to his hometown, and I remember I was scared to be robbed, and I had never been 10 rounds, and I knocked him out cold. So it was funny, because it shows like there's been some moments in my career where when my hand's healthy and when I land right, guys go down hard, and I hurt guys and I can damage guys. So that whole thing about not having a lot of power. Hey man, sometimes the power is there.
What's crazy is that a lot of your fans, their favorite fight is probably your least favorite fight against Aiello Cotto, but that's where you showed so much heart, and I think you gained a lot of fans from that loss. Is that a tricky part of boxing?
It is a tricky part of boxing, and in a way it was a fight where, when you look back at it, now that I know the politics of boxing better and how they work, it was a fight that I was never going to win, really. It was top rank, show, Puerto Rican Day Parade Eve, Cotto was a future star, looking to build him. They just needed a foil, really, and so I was never going to win that fight. The ring was small as it gets. I still don't believe it was ever legal. I don't care. I'll go to my grave thinking that ring was illegal, the size of the ring. But, the fact that I fought so bravely, I didn't go by the script. I was supposed to go down quietly, and I didn't go down quietly. So I think it saved. Essentially, what I have to thank for that fight is I've always been comfortable financially since that fight. Before that fight, there was a lot of ups and downs, ifs and what ifs, and my hand's breaking, and I don't know about my career. I've been financially stable since the Aiello Cotto fight.
What's the fight that you hate the most?
The Ricky Hatton fight.
Is that the fight you should have won?
I should have won it. I shouldn't have. Bad game planning, bad training, no chemistry in the corner. I should have changed trainers before that fight. I hadn't looked good in the Love More Than Do rematch. I hadn't looked good in the Herman and Goujo fight. it was very obvious what needed to be done. And judging what my career has done since the Ricky Hatton fight, it's very obvious, that I'm right, because had I really been as shot as I looked the entire year 2008, where I barely squeaked by in 2 title defenses and then lost terribly to Hatton, it was a situation where I was literally getting worse every fight. I mean, I had to make a change. That team, that situation, I was getting worse by the day. Usually you get better every day as you train. Training under those circumstances, I was literally getting worse. I was losing more timing, losing more speed, losing more of myself, and it was really bad, And I respect Ricky Hatton a lot, but that was such a winnable fight. That was such a winnable fight. I think that the way I beat Zinchenko, the way I handled Zinchenko, showed just a different level that I'm on. I actually think Ricky picked Zinchenko as a comeback opponent for that reason. Mistakenly picked him, but I think because he thought it was the same Malignaggi that he beat in 08 that did that to Zinchenko, and it was a bad mistake. I thought I was going to get some redemption in the rematch. I felt like I would have won the rematch. I felt like I would have got to show him, okay, now you're fighting Paulie Malignaggi. Now you're going to see the guy you should have been fighting years ago, And again, this is all on a competitive level because I really have a lot of respect for Ricky Hatton, the man, and he's a good person, and he did a lot for boxing, especially in England, so not meant as a disrespect, but I know who I am, and I feel like not enough people realize who I am, as a fighter, and I feel like I would have showed that, and also the payday wouldn't have been bad either, so I lost that on that too.